played those throughout the year quite a bit.
Oh my God, I love them. I still love them. Yeah. And so I was really, really looking forward to checking out PXG GEN6 irons. I can't wait to see how they've made the iron that I played all year a little bit better. And then we're doing the fit. I'm like, where's the tea?
What happened?
No tea. And I'm like, what? What are we doing here, Brad?
That's not by accident. They didn't just take it out of the lineup just for,
They just forgot. No.
Yeah. Welcome back, everybody. No putts given. We are going to get after today. Golf by C, Golf by T, Chris Nickel, Tony, Cubby. Find us, follow us, all those kind of things. But Tony, I thought we were done with mega equipment releases. I thought that was like a December, January thing. But here we are. It's March.
Some companies do things differently.
Keeps us busy all year round. Specifically, today, PXG GEN6, Tony? Or are we on the 6th generation?
On the 6th generation of PXG product, and that doesn't even count things like O311s and Sugar Daddies and various bits and pieces that fall outside of the main Gen lineup. So yeah, we got some new stuff.
Man, and to think, Tony, there were people, PXG isn't going to last 20 minutes. Blah, blah, blah. Like it just makes me laugh, and it's kind of interesting.
I mean, it's a company that's been perpetually going to be out of business in 2 years since it launched. Right. And like, okay, well, 2 years, I really mean it. And now 2 years from now, definitely. And 2 years from now, absolutely no chance they're still around. Right. Here we are, and I know some people are looking at this and be like, well, they did lay people off. I'm like, all right, yeah, they did, and so did a bunch of other companies, and not necessarily in golf, but that day may come. It might not, but certainly, a small, but I would argue not insignificant round of layoffs should not be seen as an indication that the sky is falling on PXG.
Nope. Sometimes you have to trim the fat. You have to evolve, and I think Bob has even been quoted a number of times as saying, hey, if you're going to do a great job in business, every so often you almost kind of have to reinvent yourself in the sense of modifying your business plan. We've seen this with prices way up here for certain things, maybe prices way down here for certain things, apparel things. It's evolving. But today, Gen 6, we're going to get right down to it. It's only been, a year? Gen 5?
A little less. So by even industry standards now, these releases are a little closer again than normal. It's not egregious. It's not like 6 months ago or anything like that. It's 10-ish, 11 even maybe. So just a little quicker turnaround this time. Mm-hmm. And I think that has more to do with beginning to realign or the totality of the products. So timing on this, and it's fine.
Yeah, so this is a full family with a big asterisk.
Yes.
We'll get to
big asterisk, in my opinion.
Big asterisk. Brad. But it is a family. It's a Gen 6, and so let's dive right in. Let's start with drivers, and then I'll talk about fairway woods and hybrids maybe, and then we'll talk about irons. So
okay.
But everybody wants to hear about drivers first. Yeah, that'd be all of it. So
Big Dog's got to hunt.
Big Dog has got to hunt.
My big dog often hunts in the woods, but
yeah,
it's fine.
Your big dog doesn't listen all that well. But anyway, what do we got? How many models? What's going on? What's the tech story? Why the hell should I care if I already got a Gen 5? All those kind of things.
Yeah,
talk to me.
That actually is a really interesting question, more particularly in the way PXG kind of has approached the information around this and some of the data they've shown us. But we'll get to that.
All right.
Fundamentally, 2 models. This will be familiar because it's unchanged from Gen 5. So you have a standard model and then the XF, aka Extreme Forgiveness model. And so, as you would expect, each of those has evolved a little bit of a winding road. But again, primarily the same story. The standard model is, I think, probably going to be the one that's for the majority of golfers. And then, again, XF is for that guy looking for an extreme / high significant amount of forgiveness. And I would say relative to the average driver on the market is probably a good way to put that in context.
So kind of a one size fits most, and then somebody who's saying, hey, kind of at all costs, I need as much forgiveness as possible. And two models. Seems to me that kind of leaves out one very, very small segment. And I saw this with the hybrids and fairway woods too, which is kind of a designated low spin model, or am I reading too much into that?
Yeah, I do wonder. And we'll talk about this a little bit more when we get to the irons too. But when PXG released the latest iteration of the Super Tour blade, they
yes,
rolled that into the O317 family. O317 previously being a designation for hybrids, now the designation for better players clubs.
Right.
And again, that's always kind of it's a loose definition. So
Right.
it's sort of specifications that typically work for better players, but also might work for other people too.
Yeah. Not exclusive, but largely correct.
Although Super Tour, those irons, I think probably definitely qualify as better player. But it is a situation where you do wonder if down the road you may see the return of an X driver. So whether the low spin X is a possibility. The XT driver was interesting. Didn't make a whole lot of noise, but it was kind of an interesting, I guess, foray into the driver space. XT standing for Extreme Tour, so that was kind of designed for tour player characteristics by some measure. So you could maybe, I've no inside knowledge on this by any means, but you could maybe see something come back, one of those two falling into the O317 lineup. It's an interesting idea. But for now, just kind of the stock standard XF combo.
One size fits most, better players through mid handicap, whatever, and then XF for extreme forgiveness.
So I mean, it's a Venn diagram. There'll be some overlap there, but
sure.
Again, it is your high forgiveness model for sure.
And we're kind of seeing that throughout the entire Gen 6 family, right? Two models, one size fits most, one size extreme forgiveness. So, all right, I bought a Gen 5 driver last year. We tell people all the time, year over year changes tend to be insignificant in terms of a grand scheme of fitting things. We had an article came out this week looking at a 10-year-old driver, Callaway X-Hot, I think, and looking at Stealth 2, and no doubt there's some nuance to these things. But point being, a lot of times it'll take 2 to 3 product cycles to iterate something substantially different where you would say, hey, you might want to consider upgrading, but there's a twist with this
and
one.
It's not the face, so that we have not twist-faced.
That's a good point. There's a twist, not face, with this one. What is it? Why if I bought a Gen 5, might I still consider looking at a Gen 6?
So a few, again, kind of the little things. So we have a redesigned crown. So we're not doing, PXG is not doing the aluminum vapor thing anymore. I don't know what real advantage it had, but as a story, it never really had legs, never took off. I don't know that it was a big selling point.
Right.
And so what they've done is found other ways to stiffen that crown, get the same or better results without aluminum vapor. So you're losing the aluminum vapor. You do not have, or I should say you have improved sound and feel, changes to the rib structures inside the club. Improved sound and feel, again, kind of a fairly
modal
consistent
frequency.
I mean, we hear the story with every release, but having hit Gen 6 and Gen 5 and pretty much every PXG driver since Gen 1, I would say that this is one area, again, just one guy's opinion here, but I think sound and feel legitimately have improved in this version. And beyond that,
anything you'd compare it to that you've hit otherwise? Because like I said,
so tough, because unless you're really doing side by side, it's so I mean, I wouldn't try and make a direct comparison at this particular point in time.
But they measure. I mean, what's interesting too, like you look at the data, they measure it, right? They have these modal frequencies, and because sound is feel, right? They're trying to hit certain frequencies at certain durations, right? And however they can moderate that impacts kind of what the feel of the club ends up being. And so, they know over time that some people, at certain frequencies, people tend to respond well or poorly. And as much as it's like, oh, it feels subjective, sounds subjective, it is, but it also isn't. right? There's commonalities where if you get 100 players to test it and 92 of them prefer this frequency to that frequency, you might try to build more around this particular frequency, right? We've seen this with Mizuno forever, particularly on their irons, and other companies, no doubt. But it seems to me they focused more on that element with this driver this time around, maybe than I've heard ever before. It seemed to be much more of a talking point.
I mean, you saw a different presentation than I did. I got kind of the hands on.
True.
It was, I don't know if it was significant, massively more significant talking point. I think they've always, feel it's always been part of the story. There's a part of it where I almost feel like, all right, we're getting to the point where they actually believe what they're saying now to an extent. So yeah, I think like it's better, but everybody, nobody's ever come out and go, look, this driver's faster and it's longer, but it feels like trash. To tell you, we screwed that part up, but just look at everything else. So
all right, so Gen 5. Why do I want a Gen 6, Tony? Gen 5. Why might I consider a Gen 6?
What PXG does really well in terms of how it talks to people like you and me is they show a lot of data. And granted, we'll talk about this all the time. It's home team stuff. Like it's by and large their testing. They did it in-house. But it's often, this is how the new product compares to the prior generation. And if you look closely, you will find areas in which you would say that, hey, maybe the new one isn't as good as the old. So we're working off PXG data and starting, well, let's say both of them. Both are a little faster and longer. PXG's testing is about 6 yards, and that comes from the combination of a little bit more speed, nearly identical launch angle, and lower spin. So both of these models are a little bit lower spinning again. Neither one spin killer.
Like a mile an hour ball speed, like in their testing somewhere. I mean, it's when I was looking at it, it was 0.9 to 1.1, depending on swing speed. But we're not talking, it's 8 miles an hour faster or something like that. We're talking plus or minus 1 mile an hour ball speed.
Yeah, so you're getting, again, the distance coming from a little more speed on center strikes and lower spin in general. Both models being a little bit lower spinning. Again, standard mid-low at best, certainly not a spin killer. And the XF is interesting in that from a performance perspective, it is relatively low spin for a extremely high MOI driver. I will say MOI may be out of the box default, not as high as it was in the previous version, though. If you get creative with the weights and swap out some stuff, you can get it there.
Yeah.
But the big talking point here is really improvements to off-center ball speed with an asterisk. So really interesting on the Gen 6 standard model in particular. If you dive through the numbers, what you find out is it's actually a tick slower, a tick shorter when the miss is higher on the face.
Okay.
And so if you are a consistently high face miss guy, maybe you would be better off with the Gen 5.
Mm-hmm.
Conversely, when you look at that low face stuff, it really, the standard model really shines there, and it actually is noticeably faster and longer than Gen 5 on low face impact. So again, if you're like, well, I tend to clank it off the bottom of the face all day, well, in this case, Gen 6 may be a better one for you. With the XF model, again, you get that extra 1 mile, approximately 6 yards based on 100-mile robot test, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
You get a little longer on center face, and then what you see is improved performance across the totality of the face relative to the Gen 5 XF. So more forgiveness across more of the face is the upsell. Here, the trade-off, as noted, the MOI number may be a little lower, but again, if you're getting more speed, you're kind of worked around that pretty well, I'd say. That's how it's supposed to work anyway.
It's still a trade-off, right? There's still trade-offs in every element of club design. But one thing that got me thinking about and looking at the fairway woods and hybrids and stuff too is like, golfers are, we're an odd bunch, right? We tend to forget the chili dips and the skulls and the 3 putts, and we hit our 7-iron 190 because that one time we did. Over water, downhill, 15 miles an hour wind behind us, and whatever. We kind of, crystallize those.
New average,
and right, guilty of it. How do you get golfers to think around this idea that, like, you don't hit the center of the face probably nearly as often as you A, think you do, or B, even in a fitting environment where you're hitting that club over and over and over and over again. Whereas when you actually go play real golf on a real course, and let's say you hit driver 14 times at most in a round, assuming you don't hit it on, let's say, 4 par 3s, and you do hit it off the tee on every other par 4, par 5, where you actually hit it on the face, you're not actually hitting it in the dead center probably as often as you think you are. Therefore, okay, it makes sense what PXG is doing to me. I get it. Like, and from that perspective, I'm like, oh, what a great idea. Like, but how do you get golfers to really understand that, hey, you really need to consider how this driver performs low heel? Because
And
I'm telling you, that's where you're hitting it.
I mean, that's ultimately what good fitters help to identify. Like, I'm going to recognize the miss pattern, not just miss meaning where it landed, but also the miss at impact that contributed to that result, and then understand, hey, which driver in my catalog is going to work better under these conditions than others. Because we know that if a guy goes into a big box store and grabs something off the rack, that's by and large not what he's looking at. He's looking at that
right.
one number on 1 or 2 swings, and that's the average.
Home run derby, right?
That's
Home
the
run
only thing
derby
that matters, and it's a fundamentally different equation. So, that's where a good fitter could come in and kind of, I would say, optimize for misses to an extent, but ultimately it's protect you from yourself. I think
it is though. I mean, I think we're seeing that too in other places. Like, it also makes me think about, okay, moving down the road at some point in time, right? They talked about, I think I heard one of the questions around AI, right? And how they design. And yes, everybody optimizes the face technology using variable thicknesses across the faces of the driver specifically to try and impact that performance. Okay, how do we change the face a little bit in the low heel, low center, high toe to try and moderate or try to impact, ball speed, launch, spin characteristics, all those kind of things. At some point in time, right? Kind of like a bespoke suit where it was made to measure. It would be kind of interesting. Like, could they take that face, have you go hit, 1,000 tee shots in different places, look at your actual pattern of where you strike the ball and say, okay, here is the optimized face topology for a Tony Covey driver.
one of one. I mean, that's probably 5 years down the road, maybe more. That's optimistic. I think maybe 3 years away, it's just going to be as simple as Chat GPT, design me a new driver, use AI. AI, use AI.
Here's my face pattern and da-da-da-da-da, automatic face topology. Or even just like, let's say you had 3, 4, 5 different face topologies that people could choose from, right? Because right now it's one. They determine what the best face topology is, right, for that particular driver. But what if you're like, hey, you're an O311 person. I want the extreme forgiveness. I need as much of this as possible. But here's what my miss pattern tends to be. Which one of these 3, 4, 5 face topologies best matches up with my individual pattern? Is that possible? Is that something we'll see soon?
Yeah, I don't know about soon. I think soon might be optimistic, but we know it's being talked about.
Yeah.
Ping kind of discussed it a little bit when we were there. So it's something brands are looking at, and it does make sense because we talk about a fitting bell curve, right? And so how can you, and right now, like a PXG O311 standard model is designed for the middle right here. And so how can you take that middle and kind of whittle down into individual segments and better fit the golfers within each of those? So that's a challenge. Obviously, there's always an analysis. Does the benefit outpace the cost, especially when look, not what percentage of golfers, even if we do this, if we come up with this incredible thing where we can fit you into the right driver and then make sure you have the right face topology for your swing within that driver, however many permutations down the road you go with the various
Sure.
possibilities, what is the actual percentage of golfers who are going to take advantage of that? And that's where
Right.
you look and go, yeah, these numbers are pathetically small. We're not going to do this.
Well, and what are the costs? We know people are very cost sensitive, right? At times, some people we get, some people are cost sensitive, right? And any more individualization, at least initially, tends to increase those costs because now you don't have the economies of scale, right? To produce 5 different types of faces is going to be more expensive than producing one type of face. And I mean, is that $50 more, $100 more, $300 more? I mean, who knows? We're not there yet. Like
Tooling
you said,
costs money, and somebody has to pay for it.
right.
It's easy math.
Right. What else on the drivers, Tony? What else struck you, surprised, liked, hated, encouraged?
I mean, nothing above and beyond that. Like I said, I'm just always impressed with what PXG is willing to share. The charts we saw more detailed than anything we've seen before.
Yeah.
Not only from PXG, but anywhere else, just to kind of break down a 9-point impact test and go, yeah, look, here's where we're a little better than we were. Here's where we're maybe not so good. And so, hey, low face, high face, whatever it happens to be, give you more insight from a fitting perspective. And obviously PXG fitters are going to have this information. Hopefully it translates out to the few kind of other custom fitting locations that do carry PXG, or even
Sure.
out to guys who are just going to go in and go, yeah, you know what? I am a low face guy. I tend to, I like to clank it below center, add a whole lot of spin. How can I maintain my speed, get a little more distance than I would otherwise? Oh, look at this. Maybe the standard is a really good fit for me because I do that. So,
Yeah.
this type of information, I think, only works to benefit everyone.
Yeah, it's not going to hurt anybody, right?
It's got to be somewhere where people can go, oh, all right, I did not know that. That is outstanding information. I will, in fact, take advantage of this opportunity.
Right.
Thank you.
Right, exactly. Well, before we get to the irons, because there's a couple nuanced things in the irons, my favorite area, Tony, as you know, fairway woods and hybrids. Tens and tens of people still read my articles, which I appreciate all 27.
Going to bring the site down with the traffic to these.
It might. Get ready.
Yeah.
Get ready. Again, 2 models, nothing crazy. Here's the quick rundown. You have the standard model. You have the XF model. The XF model is bigger. It's longer heel to toe. It's a little bit longer from the face to the crown, right? So from front to rear. And similar material story. So we're not talking crazy titanium stuff. We're not talking that. We're talking,
no vaporized aluminum.
No vaporized aluminum. We're talking miraging steel face. So a faster steel face. They like to mention things compared to 17.4 stainless steel. I don't think a ton of top flight companies are still using 17.4 as a face material.
I would also argue that I don't think a ton of golfers actually care.
I would argue that that's the case as well. I would argue a lot of golfers don't probably even know what their fairway wood or hybrid's made out of. But
apparently Ryder has some strong feelings about
Ryder,
yeah.
which I can appreciate. And again, in the standard model, you have 3 movable weights. And we didn't touch on as much of this with the drivers, but from that weight configuration, they are kind of pushed
out. Yes,
towards.
Should have mentioned that they have bumped them out farther towards the perimeter.
It sounds a little like rad speed, Tony. What we heard from Cobra a couple generations ago, right?
They are gyrating the radii.
They are radially gyrating and getting the weight as far to the perimeter extreme so that movement is is beneficial. So you got 3 movable weights in the standard. You got 2 movable weights in the XF. Both the 2 movable weights though in the XF are in the rear, so they're both back. So you can't basically, if you're an extreme forgiveness person, you can't screw it up and like try to shove those weights forward and bring the spin and forgiveness down. If you need that forgiveness, they'll let you play around with kind of that heel toe bias, but they want to keep all that weight in the back. And from a performance standpoint, again, I really appreciate where PXG is coming from on this. They're not saying they're 30 yards longer, they're 20 yards longer, anything crazy like that. Yeah, maybe, a mile an hour faster-ish, but it really is a fitting story, right? It's particular once you get, in this kind of, um, you know, call it metalwood purgatory, right? After your driver and kind of before, let's say, the longest iron you play for some people might be a 7 iron because the XF's going to have a 7 hybrid, Tony. You might want to, ooh. So, but plenty of people going, so, okay, what do I do between my driver and my 5 iron or 6 iron? And we have this metalwood purgatory. And it really is about finding the clubs that fit those specific gaps or do specifically what you want them to do within that area. So if you get a 3-wood that automatically just goes 20 yards further than your previous one, that doesn't necessarily help you. Or it's a solution that creates several other problems that you then have to go and try to moderate and fix. And so I guess I appreciate that, the story here is similar to the drivers in that it's not really about, oh my gosh, these are so much further. Yeah, maybe a little bit. Certainly didn't take a step back in that regard, but you don't hit it in the center of the face, Tony, nearly as often as you think you did.
And I mean, small thing, depending on sort of what offends your eyeball, but I do like the shape of these a bit better. Thought the prior gen was a little way too round at address, and there's some of that in the XF, and I did get say inadvertently fit into an XF 7-wood. I'm not sure. This is brand new. We're out at Scottsdale National. I'm not sure the fitter realized there was a standard 7-wood. So I got hit into the XF, and it's big. It's kind of round. I don't know if it's
may not make the cut.
It may not stick in the bag, but it is kind of. It's always interesting to experiment with something a little bit different than you would play, I guess. But it's
well, you're a big 7-wood guy. I would trust your opinion on that. So
yeah, it's really what the inflection in that sentence is. Like, I'm a big 7-wood guy, but I'm not a big 7-wood guy.
Where's the comma? Yeah, John Gordon would appreciate.
Yeah, we'll have to bring JG in and sort this out, but you get the point. Yeah.
One last point on fairway woods and hybrids. The XF does have a rail configuration on the bottom. So again, think of them as kind of like two little rudders, and the idea is to decrease friction. If you are that person who needs extreme forgiveness, we're banking on the fact you may tend to come in and hit, shots, particularly off turf, in the rough, whatever. You catch it a little heavy, catch it a little fat, and instead of that leading edge kind of just digging into the turf and stopping, the rails kind of help almost skip it through, kind of like you think bounce on a wedge, again, rudders, something like that, where kind of helps with that contact. That's the thinking. There's aesthetically, if you look at the bottom of the standard one, it has a similar kind of look to it, but there aren't rails on that one. They're just cosmetic. So,
do you find it baffling that more brands don't use rails?
Hold please. I think
we got props coming. I think. Where'd he go?
Oh boy! Yes. I did not even know that you were going to mention this, Tony. I did not, but look what I have.
Oh, that is so old school.
I did not. This was not like this. That's amazing, isn't it? Look at that original Cobra Baffler. Baffling. Do I find it in? So
you know the story of how
Tell me.
Tom Crow, Kobler's founder, originally sold those.
Talk to me.
So back in the day, before Carlsbad was all developed like it is now.
Right.
It's just kind of hills everywhere. And to an extent, it still is. Like, kind of.
The hills are still there, Tony.
You can look around in one direction and kind of find this desolate, almost wilderness. But he went from pro shop to pro shop and basically would bring the guys out into the parking lot and put a ball down in the parking lot and go, look, you can. These rails work so well, you can hit a golf ball off pavement. And so they would drop it down and have them smack balls towards the Carlsbad Hills. Wow.
So do I find it baffling that more companies don't? Yes and no. So the no part of it is that I think some companies have taken, we saw this with Cobra in particular, because, you saw that kind of rail geometry, particularly on 5-wood and a little bit on some 3-woods, I believe. But, the downside, as they explained it a little bit, was if the geometry isn't great or isn't perfect, it can actually, you know, it moves the sole of the club down a little bit, so you can find people catching it thin more often than you would like. So, are there other ways and things that you can do to kind of the leading edge, the camber, the sole geometry to try and get a similar effect without having just the rails there? Yeah, possibly. But I would think, I think too, just from a visual tech perspective, and people like to often see technology. That's what to me, it's one of those things that makes a lot of sense. Where I go, oh, okay, I kind of, I kind of like that. I actually still have a Cobra 5 wood that I struggle to take out of the bag at times because it has the rails. I really like it. I've gotten used to it. I can hit it out of the rough, and it does some things. But, you know, I yeah, I mean, I would like to see companies play around with that a little bit more.
It's good
Who knew?
stuff. It's good stuff. Anyway,
Who knew, Tony? Who knew that I would have like one of the original Cobra bafflers just sitting here in my office?
we have digressed.
We've digressed. Let's talk about irons. What do we got?
2 models. Again,
We've heard this.
there is the O311P and the O311 XP, not the XF, because the thinking was, well, golfers want extreme performance out of their irons. They may not necessarily be looking for extreme forgiveness. We'll give it to you anyway, but we're going to call it a little something else. So,
But
2
same
models,
thinking.
2
Same
models,
thinking.
yeah, absolutely. 2 models instead of 3, although the XP is like, really, I would describe it as a hypercharged distance iron. I don't have the specs in front of me, but I want to say it's like probably 27 degrees, something in that 7 iron. And to be clear, specs unchanged. So they didn't jack them from the previous version. They didn't lengthen the clubs from the previous version. Specs are the same as they've been, and I think they've been this way probably for a few generations. Again, I'd have to go back and check. But PXG's been pretty consistent there, trying to squeeze out distance other ways. But yeah, the XP it's strong. The P is kind of strong. The P is 30 degrees in the 7 iron, 44 in the pitching wedge.
Okay.
So
not egregious.
Not
egregious.
Definitely strong. That typically works for me being a high spin guy anyway. Typically end up whatever else I end up with. If it's not a jacked iron, I have to bend it to jack to get the ball flight and spin rates I need.
You tend to be that 44-degree pitching wedge guy regardless, right?
Yeah.
You end up there one way or another.
I try and sneak a little more loft into the pitching wedge just to keep the progressions with the wedges reasonably sensible, but
right.
And oftentimes I'll just have a Vokey pitching wedge on the bag anyway.
Sure.
But yeah, the 30 degree 7 iron, that's exactly where I want it. So yeah, that's good.
All right. So similar specs, again, 2 models, kind of the one size fits most, the extreme performance component. Okay. Got it. So if they're not changing that so much, what are they changing?
That's a really simple story. I mean, there's always some subtleties with kind of shaping of things, but the story here is it's just faster. It's just faster, longer.
It's just
right. But that's really it. So
more horsepower, same car, more horsepower.
Yeah. The one thing, hey, what makes this, if you want to say better, I like better as it relates to speed and distance. If you can control the launch and spin to wherever you want them.
Sure.
Not everything has to be toward ball flight. Understand that.
Right.
But it's faster because the face is thinner. And the thing that's kind of impressive about this story, to the extent that any face thinning story is impressive, but going back to Gen 1, all the way back to the beginning, PXG had the thinnest face in golf.
Right.
What they launched, nobody had a face as thin as what PXG created. What that elastomer, the original glue, in part allowed them to do was go really thin with the face. And because we've all heard these stories, I doubt there's anybody that's listening to this who's gone, I've never heard of a thin face being a thing that mattered. Right. We know golf companies love the idea of trying to thin faces because that's how it's one way to get speed. Yep. And so from from the time that Gen 1 launched, which was 8-ish years ago, give or take, to this day, nobody else has come close to achieving that level of thin face. So 8 years without any change to the thickness of the face, and PXG has stayed the thinnest face in golf by plenty. Again, nobody's come close. And again, if you say we believe that hollow body are the way to go, then you can't really even look at going that thin. So
Sure.
it is competition in this regard is limited to the people who put something behind the face, your various goo fillings. But again, nobody close.
Right.
And now this time around, PXG has thinned out the face, not massively. And then there's some variable face thickness that goes into that. But
sure,
after 8 years, they thinned the face, made possible by the X-Core 2 material that came out in the Gen 5 iron. So that's kind of the thing is this would not have been possible with the previous material. The face would have failed. And it took about a year to figure out that with X-Core 2, we can actually make the faces thinner, more speed, more distance, without changing any of the other specifications of the club. And I mean, they're definitely hot. And the other piece of this, and again, PXG in particular has always talked about, irons feel great, best feeling irons, et cetera, et cetera. We've heard it. This time around, again, similar story saying you will notice that they feel softer. And again, that's what I've experienced. I think it is noticeably softer. And the reason for that is because that face is thinner, more of the kind of that softer feel from the underlying polymer material comes through at impact. So that's where that's coming from. And so again, I like when I hear a story where they can say, yeah, this is what you're going to get, and let me very easily explain why. Well, yeah, it's faster because we thin the face. Like, okay, I get that. That checks out. Makes sense. It feels better because that face is a little bit thinner, you are getting a little more of that polymer at impact. So softer, again, everything kind of checks out. A little bit longer. Again, not massive. We're not, it's not a 10 more yards type of thing, but if you want more distance off your irons, then all right, you can get it.
It's there. Well, and to your point too, I think, they mentioned like in that world of hollow body irons, right? You kind of have two separate philosophies. You have some say, hey, we're going to use a thin face, but we're going to leave that cavity basically empty. We're not going to inject any kind of goo, polymers, things you can find, whatever on aisle 6 of your grocery store. We're not going to do it. We're going to leave that cavity open. Others saying, yeah, we want to reinforce that face and fill the cavity to do things like impact, sound, and feel, in this case, performance. And, if you took the PXG, the Gen 6 irons, and let's say you took the goo out of there, the X-Core 2 material out of there, it'd fail in a single shot. You would crush the face.
That is a one swing club.
Yeah. It's done. It's gone. So like that goo material
might be fun. Like, is that the new golf prank? Instead of the exploding golf ball, you have the exploding club face. I don't know if I would pay, several $100s per stick for that impact experience. But yeah.
All right. I have a question, Tony. So the last several times we've been out to PXG, Gen 3 and 4 and 5 launches or whatever, you and I have typically fit into, or at least part of our sets into, the O311 T iron. There was like a T, a P, an XP, whatever. Where did the T go? I'm not hearing much about a T this time around. Where'd it go?
T, and it's frustrating because, as you mentioned, I was originally a P guy. Gen 1, that's all there was.
Right.
And then over time kind of evolved into mix set. I think Gen 2, I might have been like XPPT. At one point, I definitely had all 3 models in the bag and kind of moved into combo PT. And then last time out, I was a full bag of Ts. And so you
played those throughout the year quite a bit.
Oh my God, I love them. I still love them.
Yeah.
And so I was really, really looking forward to checking out PXG Gen 6 T irons. I was like, I can't wait to see how they've made the iron that I played all year a little bit better. And then we're doing the fin. I'm like, where's the T?
Where's the T? What happened?
No T. And I'm like, what? Brad, what are we doing here, Brad?
Brad. So what's the story there? That's not by accident. They didn't just take it out of the lineup just for
They just forgot. No.
Yeah.
So as we kind of talked about with the drivers, right? You've got this
Right.
O317 line, which right now is basically just that Super Tour iron. So
right.
the teaser, what PXG has kind of suggested is that their T iron will slide into there, and the between the lines read is maybe it's going to be a little different take on T. And again, for most wanted, and we didn't. PXG wanted the O311 Gen6 P to be tested in our players irons test.
Mm-hmm.
And by the time we got him, it was too late. We had like 18 of 20 testers fully completed, so not really possible in our methodology to just kind of backfill.
You can't.
Let's just
can't just slide them back in. Yeah,
it doesn't really work that way. But
you
know, I look at that and like, there's no way that the P, which stands for players, there's no way that this club belongs alongside others in that category. Hollow body is typically screams players distance. It's
at a minimum.
For that category, it's extremely strong lofted, so it doesn't really fit there. Arguably the Gen 5 Ts do, but again, that hollow body maybe kind of puts it more like a P770. So long story short, I think we may see some changes to the T, which will be some sort of O317 product when it comes. And I feel like confidently something is coming in that space.
Yeah.
And
what would you want to see? What
I want exactly what I have now. Like this is no joke. I am very, very fond of the O311 Gen 5 T irons. And so when I sat down with Brad Schweigert, PXG's chief product officer, that's the Brad they keep screaming at.
Yeah, Brad!
He's like, our thinking is that the true better player, the guy who would be in that player space, what is the T space, isn't really looking for speed and distance and
max ball speed,
that hollow body maybe. And I'm like, that's what I want, Brad. I want speed. Because
but I don't want a ton of offset. I want
a relatively compact body. I want speed. I don't want a lot of offset. I want exactly what I have now, but just make it a little faster. Because you made, and I wouldn't even say make it faster, but you made the P's faster. You did that. You already showed you could do that. So make the T's faster. None of this.
Damn it! Just give me what I want.
None of this other stuff. Just give me what I want. That's all. Easy. Just call me, ask me what I want, and then make it. We don't need to complicate this at all.
Why can't I just
one of one if we have to? Yeah. So I think this is going to be, for better or worse, something that is more, T100 kind of like, I don't want to say classic players, but modern player specs, something like the Mizuno model number that I can never remember, but we'll say JPX Tour because that I can. MP whatever.
We got
whatever the
MP.
Yeah, there you go. That's the one.
223s, probably.
Some assortment of numbers. Something that's more.
So many numbers.
More classic instead of like a really nice hollow body distance iron disguised in a true player's package that just happens to do exactly what I want it to do, Brad.
What about this, Tony? Here's what I would like to see. I'm going to answer my own question. I would love, because like you, I fit in to that T one, but at times.
But you didn't play them, right? You moved into something else here.
Yeah, because I've tended toward that kind of player's cavity back.
This does not. Let's be honest. This does not impact you on a personal level the way that it does not.
It does not impact me on a personal level. But here's what I wouldn't mind seeing. Here's what I would love to see is, as we age and maybe we lose a little swing speed here and there and those things, I would not mind seeing 4, 5, 6 iron with some goo in there, a thinner face but less offset, kind of a progressive set. And then let's say, as we move into that 7, 8, 9 pitching wedge, where frankly, right, because of the loft and how you're presenting it at impact, the hotness, if you will, that super thin face becomes less of a ball speed generator, and maybe that's where you retain some of that more typical players cavity back type of look, sound, and feel.
Yeah, I mean that's interesting. So if whatever the T becomes could be,
Yeah.
as they've done with the O211 to an extent, a bit of a combo set by design. So if you gave me, Brad, goo-filled 5, 6, 7 irons, and then gave me something more traditionally cavity back in the 8, 9 and wedge, where
Right.
speed is not necessarily a priority. We've talked about this, and forgiveness too. We've talked about this
Right.
before, that at those lofts, loft becomes more of the driving factor in the way that the club designs than basically anything you're doing with the construction.
Yep.
So in that respect, I would be okay with it. So
Okay.
that I hadn't considered. I would be okay with that. But if you just sort of take it away from me entirely, I'm going to be mad. I'm going to be very childish about this.
Yeah, the O317 TC
Yeah.
is what they need, or the TCN. See, like TC CN. See what
Yeah.
I did there?
Yeah. That's
a combo
that's a
set.
clever little mashup. All
I
right.
don't know. Brad, let us know. Keep us posted. Last thing on these pricing. Let's just talk pricing real quick.
So I actually, while you were talking, I went and pulled this up because I'm like, this is actually, well, this release is as usual with PXG. Nothing is ever like, nothing is ever
linear.
Nothing is ever like, here's the date, here's the price, this is the totality of the story. It's like sometimes it's here's the date and we'll let you know the prices later. Sometimes it's here's the date and the date changes because
prices change, things change.
Because the owner of the company posted something on Instagram. Like any number of things can vary the launch plans here. So yeah, pricing.
So yeah, talk to me about price.
Drivers $499.
$499.
$499. Fairway woods $299. Hybrids $289, and irons $219 per. I guess now would be a good time to mention this is fair. I'm sure when these articles post, we're going to have a contingent of readers who are like, whatever, I'll just wait when it hits 300, 200, whatever it happens to be, because as we've seen in recent PXG product releases, the price is the price right up until it isn't, and that drop usually happens pretty quickly. Plus or minus 3 months is probably fair. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, somebody, but it does seem to be a rapid discount model. When I was out at PXG for the launch event, I sat down with Bob Parsons, and he, sort of acknowledged, like, yeah, we've been here and we came down there, and there's been some volatility as we sort of navigated COVID and did what we needed to do, or what we thought was the best thing to do to grow the company. And so now that we're coming out at the end of that, PXG, Bob has told me, like, that's going to stop. We're going to stabilize. So if things go according to plan, as things go as they were described to me, what you're going to see is O311 Gen 6 is going to come out at a price, $499 for a driver, and it's going to stay there. And it's going to stay there for a good bit of time. At the same time, you will see Gen 5 stay in the lineup. Going to continue to make Gen 5 available, and this will be a true cascading model where those prices come down. So if you want to get the old stuff at a good price, it'll be there for you. If you want the new stuff at the premium price, it'll be there too. Don't expect that new one to drop as quickly as they have in the last couple of years for PXG. So we'll see if that pans out. I don't know.
But just overall, quick point, overall, it's interesting to me in that this, on the metalwood side, kind of places PXG closer to the floor of mainline brands, right? When we look at, Titleist, TaylorMade, Callaway, Ping, Cobra, blah, 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 we're talking drivers top 629-ish through that. This is
kind of that Mizuno Cobra-ish range, more so than Callaway's, TaylorMade's, Titleists, etc.
Yeah, I'm just saying they can kind of see the floor a lot easier than they can see the ceiling. They're looking. There's not many companies to look down. Yeah, so, and again, I don't care. It doesn't make any difference. But I would think for people that, again, are price conscious, and we get a lot of those comments, if I'm one of those people, they should be jumping up and down going, oh my gosh, I can get, it's an option. This isn't $650. It's not $700. It's not $725. It's
$499, $299, $289, $212, $219, $219. I almost said $212. I got off by 7. $219.
Yeah. So they're. I mean, the irons are obviously slightly more aggressive in terms of that, but they're not 3. They're not 4 1/4. Not
Again,
375 like we've seen, 325 even before. We're not talking, $2,500 for a set of irons.
And Gen 5 is going to be available at, I'm ballparking here. I would guess, certainly less than 179 or below, maybe 149. I don't know. I'd have to check and see and wait and see where everything falls. But I mean, again, like I'm happy with the Gen 5 Ts. And so if this never came out, if there was no Gen 6, there's a couple.
Or if they waited another year on Gen 6.
I mean, there's a couple things I want to look at this year for sure, but I'd be content and wouldn't feel like this needs to be an upgrade. But now I'm mad that maybe he's going to fundamentally change everything. But again, that's my problem.
You can yell at Brad about that, and we can once we know more, we can have a sit down, knock down, drag out, bare knuckle kind of situation with Brad. Damn it, Brad. Any final thoughts, Tony? That's a lot of info.
No, we went
on one generation.
We went longer than we wanted to. That's the end of the show. We can't talk about anything else.
We'll scrap it. Till next time. Questions, comments, thoughts on PXG, any of those things, please post them below. Let us know what you think. What else do you want to know about? What else do you want us to cover? What else do you want us to dig up, find out, discuss? All of those things. Tony Covey, Chris Nickel, Golfs by T, Golfs by C. Find us on the interweb. Follow us. Don't DM us. DM Tony, not me. And we'll see you next time. Yeah.
Brad.
Brad.